Benvenuto, everybody. Hope you're doing well today. Grab yourself a Prosecco, and we're going to do a Venice scene. The big point today that I'm going to try and get into is how do we interpret a situation for a watercolor. This is a wonderful photo, but those magnificent reflections down there, which are just almost like shards of different colors and things, might almost be more of a an oil or acrylic or an opaque medium subject than watercolor. You could do it in watercolor, but to paint around all these complex little shapes, it might get kind of busy and not have the watery feel that you might like, particularly when you've got such a kind of similar texture up here with the things with the old brick and other things like that. So, hi Lisa, hi Carol. So I'm going to start in on the drawing first, and then I'm going to launch into that subject more as we go along. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find that key horizontal and the key verticals. This is slightly below the halfway mark. I'm working on a 11 by 15 piece of Saunders 140-pound cold press. So there's my, well, it staggers a bit, the building here, and then there's an alley. So it's going to go up a bit and down a bit here. That line and that line are the key ones, and notice we have more space over here than we have over here. So, and this is the corner of the building, not the alley per se, which we're looking back into at an angle. Hi, Becky. So as long as this is wider than that, I'm going to be general about it at first. There's it looks like a bit of sky back here, but it's actually a very white window or something. I'm going to use it as sky. So the part of the side of the building that I see over here is narrower than the sides of the buildings I see over here. And then, sure, it's about the, hi Cindy, and happy pre-birthday. It's a gondola subject, we will get to the gondola. So I'm fishing for positions here. There's a pitched terracotta roof line here. I place my pencil to get my angles. Looks like there's two of them. Most of that I'm going to want to try and paint. Now I'm down into, needn't draw much here because that's where our gondola and things happen. So there's another one peeking in from this side, a little one that was coming around the corner. I think we just want to feature the main one here. So some sort of balcony action, a few places. Okay, the gondola. Where does it fall? In this vicinity here. So there's a bit of a pitch to the what you might call the bow and the, well, no, it is the bow and the stern of the thing. And there's also a bit of an angle, so the boat is tilting a little bit this way, but then also the bow tilts forward. So and that curve, can you see the Nike swoop? Our tendency will be to draw that curve with its center here, but its center is actually back here. So don't draw it there, draw it back here. So, see, there's the Nike swoop. Not going to get to my passengers in there yet, just yet at any rate. Everything's going to be drawn a little bit darker as I get to it. So our gondolier, his head comes above the bow decoration there. He's up about here. Now we've got our two, I'm going to put circles for their heads, or jelly beans for their heads. Maybe I'll get a sharper pencil. He's got his arm around her. Got a beard. They're a very Midwestern looking couple. He had a ball cap, so they're almost certain to be Americans. So hi, Kathy. Bit of his hand showing there, her shoulder coming down here. The gondolier has one arm lower than the other, and the oar or the whatever it is, pole comes out there. So there's our alleyway, and those windows and things I'm going to make happen as I paint. I am going to pretend there's an opening up there where some light is getting through. because we're actually going to wet the sheet today. And work with a very, very damp surface to get some very nice soft colors. I might suggest about where my windows are going to go. Just like last week, we're going to have to do things to make each window a little bit different. And again, happily they are. So okay, now, enough drawing. So, the colors I'm working with today, Naples yellow, couple of Naples yellows, yellow ochre, raw umber, burnt sienna, another Naples yellow, 3 of them actually, cad orange, cad red, transparent red iron oxide, something, I don't know what the heck it is, I probably won't be using it. I squirted out from an old tube. The quinacridone rose slash alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, Prussian blue, viridian, and the lavender. I'm just going to spritz everything to get it nice and ready to go. I'm going to get a biggish brush, this really big mop. I'm going to get some dirty water, and I'm just going to wet the surface of the paper. And that's going to lift a little bit of the drawing. I was drawing with a 3B pencil, but that's all right. Because we're going to have to put our colors in a little bit darker than we might actually need to. It does look kind of bright and vibrant, but I'm going to need to get the extreme sparkle of this, which isn't actually white, it's sort of blue. I'm going to have to pitch all of this a little darker than we may think it is. And what I'll have to do is pull those reflected colors, those yellows and siennas and oranges down, the brownish reddish siennas, the grayish reddish siennas, they're going to come down, and then the darker colors of the reflection, and whoops, same place but a few minutes earlier. Cindy, you were on this. Just we went under that bridge and we came up on the couple. So first colors I want are the Naples yellow and maybe some orangey version of it. These are going to be not quite as runny. Maybe put a little yellow ochre in that. So yeah, let's do that. Runny, but not quite as runny as if, you know, maybe when if we were working on dry or wet wash on a dry surface. Hello, Audrey. Let's see. Everything of the gondolier, their clothing, their flesh color, except some minor highlights, which will be easy to make, are all darker than what I'm going to put in now. So let's get a sienna color going for here. So I'm using the transparent red iron oxide. I'm going to have to mix that in the pan below here. Put a little red in that. It is a reddish sort of terracotta. And I may be sort of dulling that down. Bonsoir, Noel. It must be later in Brittany. I'm going to be making it a little bit duller with the raw umber or the burnt umber there. So I'll have that ready to go. So my only task is to try to skip some light spots here if I can. Maybe I'll get a slightly smaller brush. I'm going to start with the yellowish tones, which I am going to put in this vicinity. I'm going to start to make them a little more orangey. Let's maybe overstate that a bit. That looks strong now, but it's because, and boy, got to keep that paper wet. I have to extend this color down through here. Now over here, more of this. Yes, there are some white areas on these windows, but when this dries a little bit lighter, we are going to be going in with a darker version of this color, and the color that's there now will dry to a point where it will appear to be that color that the light lintel pieces there are. Just very, very pale there. Was in the evening. And I might, hi Tom, while the paint is still damp, I'm going to rinse my brush, squeeze it out, and lift using clean water. Now, of course, we're going to have to, well, I'll just go through that. This will need to dry. I might even blot some of those. Okay, let's dry this. Put it on mute. Oops. Okay, hi Steve. Now, probably sticking with my large mop, or larger mop. I'm going to begin to flesh out some of these items. So, let's see. Using what we have here, in a little less runny concentration, in other words, more pigment, a little less water than we previously used, I'm going to start beefing up some of the colors in here. So I'm going to get some raw umber and a kind of a reddish gray. Grayer still, more raw umber. Maybe a little bit of ultramarine blue in that. I know this looks dark, doesn't it? But we need to create, change it up just a bit. Let's make it a bit bluer at the bottom. We need to get some distance between that and these in terms of their value. So a little more red. If you get into the figures a little bit, I don't have to worry too much because they are darker. So maybe a little bit lighter orange color, dull orange. Well, that's not a dull orange, is it? Let's mop it up. Lighter, so just bring some water to it. So I don't have to worry about getting into the gondolier. Some of that up here, I think. Maybe some of this dirty yellow ochre with a little bit of lavender in it. More than that. It's going to look like a holy mess till we get towards the end. And then it's going to look, we hope, like the thing we're trying to make. A bit more of that same thing, but a little bit of red in it. Try to paint around this Moorish looking window. I'm going to get a little redder as I go down. Skip that window. A little, let's get some alizarin in it. A little more dirtyish, purplish sort of color. Put a little blue in that to make a sort of dirty gray, and put that in while that surface is wet. It will bleed out because we are adding a consistency of paint that is very like the consistency of what's there at the moment. So it's going to have a tendency to fuse and bleed into the surrounding colors. A bit of that in there. Now the front of this building is a series of orangey reds, reddish reds. It's every kind of brick color there is. Hi Karen. Thank you, Lisa. Well, that's what we're gonna shoot for. And the wonderful thing about painting a subject like Venice is this stuff is so weathered that so I'm switching to the more purpley red here. So you can see I'm leaving the old color behind, and then the color that I left behind looks more like the lintels, which I believe are limestone or something to that effect. You can paint through the gondola, it's darker. Just leave some bits and spots for... It's interesting as you went along and looked at the place, you could tell that this was patched in one century and that was patched in another century, and just fun to look at. I think I need to reinforce my strong yellows down through the middle. With the Naples yellow or the yellow ochre. Yeah, that looks more like it. Some of that up here too. These are not really glazes, they're sort of bleeding glazes, I think. There's even a little of that here. Now, I want to continue down into the, I see I probably could have gone stronger with these initial colors. But to keep everything, I'm going to spritz to, so it kind of bleeds out. A little bit of orange. Leave some of the lighter color behind. Let's get some red, grayish red. A little more alizarin in it. Dirty that up. By dirtying it up, I mean that I'm taking some of the mix from other places and putting it in. Hello, Linda, and hello, Ann, new friends. So these marks tend to stay put as I do them by virtue of this surface being drier. So, but since it's damp, when I put this in, you can see it just kind of disappears into the mix. So over here, I want to start smuggling in a little bit of this Viridian, this green. Viridian is something of a new color for me. I typically don't use tube greens, but I like the Viridian because it tends to function like a very blue, greenish blue rather than a green. Even run some of that through here. Okay, let's leave that alone. Perhaps dry it, and then begin concentrating on our, well, while we're waiting for that to set up, we could get involved in our figures. So I'm going to get a stiffer haired brush, the Oriental brushes. They're about the same size as the mop, as you can see, but this is a very soft hair and this is a stiffer hair, so it doesn't carry as much paint because there's not as many capillary spaces in there. So the other thing I don't think I've ever mentioned, here's a bigger one, maybe you can see it. The outside of this thing is, I believe, sheep or goat. And see there's a darker hair inside it? That's stiffer. So that makes the brush, the thinner hair, the sheep or the goat, carries the paint. The stiffer hair on the inside makes it more, hi Brent, gives the brush its firmness and its shape, or it helps it to keep its shape. So transparent iron oxide or burnt sienna are either one for the flesh color or gondolier, hands and face. I'm going to make it a little redder for our crew. And then her face perhaps a little pinker. Just a little more water. This is hand. Okay, that's enough of that. Quit monkeying with that. Maybe the lavender or the ultramarine up here, and it turns into a gray. Insides of the windows. This window is very dark, so I'll come back and get that later. That side is a bit darker than that side. So it's probably a good stage to do that. So some lavender and maybe a bit of the red, more of the lavender, perhaps some raw umber. Or perhaps what I should be doing, well, let's try it just to be sure, because we need to start making some specific marks. Whoops, do the mute. Okay, here we go. Slower moving paint. See that moves slowly. So I'm going to start towards my bottom here. And be a little bit lighter, meaning a bit of water, towards the top. More light is getting into the top of that alley than is getting into the bottom. Oops, let's do a pinker version of that gray. Back here. So leaving some of the old color behind to create the appearance of weathered stucco brick, whatever. Let's make it a little redder. I'm using a sideways stroke so that I get a broken stroke to hopefully suggest a bit of that brick. the old brick. Okay. Nothing terribly specific back here yet. It's not going to happen until we start seeing dark marks for windows. Now, one thing I do need to get into is this, where the water line hits. It's kind of dark, bluish, greenish, brownish stuff that grows where water stays. It's going to be dark, as is this. I'm going to try to frame the front of that bowsprit on that gondola. There's shutters. Let's make these a little bit greener. Terrible flies this season. I apologize if they land. Hi, James. Let's make it a bit browner with some raw umber. A little bit of ultramarine blue. Trying not to get too precious with those, because all my detail I want to save for when I get to the gondolier and the couple. A little bit of shadow under the lintel. Let's get a red-orange sienna. Well, the simple thing to do will be ultramarine blue and red iron oxide, and maybe a little bit of alizarin. Go too dark. To begin doing the shadow under these soffits that hang down. There's one under here too. And I really shouldn't be talking about them as soffits or thisits or thatsits. I should be just saying it's a shape, and it's about here, about there. Touch a little bit of creamy ultramarine blue into it to variegate it. I'm going to pull a window underneath it. Quick strokes. There's a window coming down here. So it's going back. That means we need to put the bottom of this window a little bit lower than the bottom of that one. Let's get a little bit redder. Or bright sienna. Make those. Let's get back to our dirty green. There are some shutters here that would be opposite those, but the bottoms will be a little bit lower, so being suggestive, we want to save detail for here. More blue. More alizarin. So get out of there, fly. Some suggestions of doorways over here. Corner of this is very dark. And then there are bars. Okay, careful, being careful not to get too detailed, just being suggestive. Flies. Something maybe a little more ochre. And burnt umber. If you want a good way to determine how much do I put in, how much do I not put in, always make a decision about how far away is it, how close is it my center of, is it my focal point? And another good way to determine that is just squint. And the stuff that still appears in your field of vision after you've done closing one eye altogether and half closing the other one, that's the stuff that you still need to paint. Now let's see if I can do the Moorish window. Tip a little bit of some green in there or blue or something to variegate it. All right, I think it's time to get into our boat and then our reflections, our figures. So the thing to do is, again, to dry that. Okay, we're back. So you can see now, even though that looked dark in the beginning, when we put this color in and left that behind, it now looks like these lighter limestone bits. And the reason I painted through on those was so that they didn't stick out as white things, and these will stick out as light things. So that's an important thing, to not make those background things compete with foreground things. I'm going to get a nylon the stiffer bristle nylon brush for the figures. Ultramarine blue, transparent oxide red, heavy on the ultramarine blue to make a brownish black or a bluish black. I'm going to do my gondolier here. He's got a vest. It's actually sort of chilly in the evening. There's a bit of a lean to his body. I'm going to try to avoid the pole. Stripes on his a little more blue for the pants. So his body was leaning to the left and his legs were pushing a little bit. I believe he'd just come around the corner there, so. Continue the pole. Now, yeah, let's see, his face is not dark enough. So, nor his hands. Which means this fellow, and he had a bit of a beard. I'm going to leave him with a light colored shirt, I believe. But I will make her top more purplish. So some dark blues, a little bit of alizarin. Her hair, I'm going to put some brown in it to, whoops. And just let it merge with her garment. Had a ball cap on. Okay, the gondola. I will need a brush that's a little bit bigger and will hold a bit more paint. So back to our Oriental. Viridian, maybe the Prussian, and the raw umber. There's a greenish, bluish, they're black, but they reflect. So we're using all our dark components here. And there's a little bit more showing of Try to leave a little bit of a rim. Dark components to make a dark color and variegate them a little bit, the mix, so that it's not all the same color. Now I'm going to leave it at the water line and hopefully keep that wet edge. Let's just touch a bit of blue right into this. While it's wet and let it bleed. I'm going to blot that brush a bit. Pull in here. I may need to actually go back and hit that again. In other places. There's some dark on the interior of the boat. Again, try to leave a little bit of a rim. You do lose it around here. Find it back there again. Now's the part where I get nervous. Let's smear that. Asya, hello. While this is damp like that, I want to make the colors of the reflections so that I'm going to mix some more Viridian into this and a little bit of the umbers. And I want it to, the edge to meet and melt into the boat, or the gondola. Darker. More green. Get away, fly. And these are not going to make much sense until we get the other reflections in over here. Okay, here we go. There will have to be a little bit of extra business in the boat, but that's coming up later. Now, I'm going to put some yellow ochre in this, a little bit more water, and perhaps some alizarin. These, you know, you probably think, boy, these are muddy colors. Yes, they are. So here we go. Get on the side of the brush. Can you paint those exact reflections? Probably not. I can't. But we can come up with something that has the same sort of pattern quality. Sort of a... So I look for those patterns. And while this is wet, I'm smuggling in another color. This side's a little bit darker. This side's a little bit lighter. That should be reflected in the reflection. Okay, over here, these are more purplish looking. So we're going to be mixing some reds into this. Reds and greens, heavier on the red than the green. A little bit more water. A little bit more water. Stand back a bit, see what I'm getting. Bit more green. Those melt. This surface is still damp, so I want to make the green that I'm bringing in there is the same consistency of what I just put down. So I want to get the character of that wet foundation, foundation there that's always in contact with the water and staying dark. Now, I need a little bit more yellowy orange right in here. Nelia, hello. Some little sparkles here and there. Okay, let's go for a little more detail on the boat and the people in the boat. So I'm actually going to get some of this lavender and some ultramarine to suggest his pants. And I think I should also do the sleeves of the gondolier. Some of this pale brownish stuff give his face a little more character. This fella too, her too. I think even though he was bald, I think I'm going to have to give him some hair. That's too wet to make that ore a little more apparent. Some dry brush work. At this point, when I've got a fair amount of detail on the figures in the boat, I can think about maybe if I want to put some more detail into the background there. So I might make a more reddish brick color to make this side stick out from, well, let's see. Soften that with water. Let's get some of that reddish stuff. Very red right there. Perhaps here too. Now, some darker grayer, bluer colors. I probably should not have put a beard on this fellow. But what I am going to do is I'm going to make it as if he had a light colored shirt. In shade. Make the side of that building a little darker. This side of the building a little darker. I want to make the tile roof almost done. We're almost done. Carol asks, what are the white areas on the building? Back here, I think you mean? That's where the light is strongest, and I'm about to... Or it was blasting through that alleyway. Some sign things. Oh, it's a lamp. Doorway. More orange. And some weird oddball detail on the building here. Why the gondola? Oh, you're probably talking about these things here. Those are, looks like they were limestone facings of some sort. And I'm leaving, I should have mentioned, I'm leaving them out because they would kind of stick out, I think, and take away from our subject. So I have a tendency to do that. If something's going to jump out ahead, that was why I didn't leave them light. I painted through with the terracotta color first so that this does, I want these to be the brightest spots. That's my, so now I'm going to, the lower part of his shirt is going to be darker. That. Where else? These are little accent marks that I'm going to keep centered near the vicinity of the primary subject, which is this. Doorway, lamps. Connecting my darks there. You're right, Cindy. Some of them did have street names. They were street signs, weren't they? Now that we think of it. Thank you for reminding me of that. Just to make the windows all a little bit different, I'm going to put some shutter things there. And let's see if I can doctor up this guy's face a bit. Him too. And then the last thing I'm going to do is get out the white gouache and put some sparkly highlights. So the bill of his hat, which was black, they're starting to catch the, let's put a couple more little highlights over here. But mainly, I want to keep them from the light that's blasting through up here. So I'm just going to put that up there. Maybe I could even mix a little bit of that with the yellow ochre, or the Naples yellow, and put a few things like that. Street number. Street number. Well, see, that sticks out, so I'm gonna. Okay. I do want to get a bluish color, which that lavender is fairly opaque. Okay, let's detape and see what we got. So the key idea today was that if you've got a subject like this with these very textured marks, you either have to go to an opaque medium like pastel or oil or acrylic and do them as is, but think about whether you want them to be as busy, because you've got texture back here. So if you want to suggest the age of the building, then maybe save it for that and go for a more soft but obviously watery type reflection here. Now as I look at it, I think I can make a bit of a stronger baseline on that where the water meets the buildings. I really want that water to look wet and settled. And I think I need to go more into that oh yeah, I like that better. I want the reflection and the object casting it to just melt together at some point. Hey Carlos, how you doing, man? I'm going to be seeing you in a few weeks, I think, right? Going to Bluff Strokes. The annual Bluff Strokes paint out in Dubuque is coming up. The 29th of September to October 5th. Some really, really good painters show up at that. And I always like to go up and see what they're all up to and try to come up with something too. And put a little bit of a under the where his hole hits the water. When you do a pattern, look. When you do a reflection, see if you can find a pattern. That's something. Thank you, Becky. Okay, there we go. Gondolier. I could make a bit more of his face, I think, or the figures' faces, but I would want to be at a larger scale than this. The only thing I think I'm going to do is variegate these windows a bit. Okay, so I really should end this with, well, thank you, Mary Helen. It would be nice to play something like the Barcarolle from Tales of Hoffmann by Offenbach, the classic gondola Italian opera song. So, everyone, thank you for tuning in. Stay safe, stay sane. Oh, thank you, Jane. And I will see you, and thank you, Cindy, and I'll see you guys all next week. Bye-bye.